I've got Captain Pete Alex with me tonight from Vision Quest Sportfishing. Pete, how you doing?
Good evening, Chris. Good to be here.
So you just sat down at a round table here. You literally just walked in a few minutes before the show went on air. What were you talking about tonight?
We're talking about spring brown trout tactics, Lake Ontario, of course.
Okay, and that's something that I've already seen guys out doing that already. I know there's some issues with runoff that has kind of muddied up the waters, if you will. But I know there's people out there that have already been catching fish. I saw Hajeki's already been out on Ontario taking some clients out. Tell me about that spring bite and what that's like.
Spring bite for brown trout is, you're going to want to find the right water color. That's probably the most key to that. The water's cold. You're going to find cold water everywhere. If you could find a little bit warmer water, right, or some transition water from cold to warm, that would be one place to key on. But you're going to want to find some decent color water. Mud water is tough to catch these fish in, especially right now. They're not as fast moving. They're not going to chase. They're not really aggressive because of the water temperatures. So you're going to want to find basically a green to a light brown colored water. And that's probably the most key element to catching these fish right now.
So people always say dirty water, but it can't be too dirty. You need it kind of like medium dirty.
No, and there was even Rick was out recently. He had to pull lines and run 12 miles because he was trying to butt his head into that dirty water too long to try and pull these fish, and they just don't go very good. And then another one of my peers was out brown trout fishing also, banged his head in that brown water all day and didn't have a very good day.
Pete, you've got boats in Wilson, and you also have boats on Lake Erie. So tell me about your outfit or your charter and kind of how it works and where you're fishing.
Well, the Wilson fishery is going to start for me sometime in April, probably the third week in April. Lake Erie fishing, I'm actually going to start in March in Presque Bay, right out of Erie, Pennsylvania. So I'll put my 27th year in, again, sometime in March, and I'll fish that first up to about the 2 weeks in April, maybe into the third, and basically pull that boat out of the water and then transition up to Lake Ontario.
Okay. And that Presque Bay, is that a lake trout bite or what are you chasing there?
That's all steelhead in there and the occasional brown trout.
Okay.
But we do have the opportunity, like our lake trout fishery is starting to kick in then also. So if we leave the protection of Presque Bay, about 8 to 10 miles east of Erie, we can find lakers, whether they're in 30 to 50 foot of water, or they're going to be out in the what we call a second set of 50s, which is about 4.5 miles off the shoreline. They're going to be in one or two places. So we might dabble with them if we get the right lake conditions. But we get a lot of wind that time of year, so it's prohibitive to fish in a lake a lot. So we have that protection of Presque Bay, which helps us.
That keeps you from having the blow-off days. So is it pretty solid as far as booking a date there, you're going to get the fish?
Right. We don't run a lot of trips that early. We run a couple trips, few trips. That's all.
Tell me about what that program looks like, steelhead in Lake Erie and that Presque Bay. And I'm assuming that's a spoon program then?
We're going to run spoons off our divers, spoons off our riggers. And then our planer board program is going to consist typically of a side, which is usually 4 rods with stick baits, shallow running stick baits, the 3-inch variety, not too big, pot colors with some natural colors.
Everybody likes having the pictures with the giant kings in the summer.
Right.
But I mean, if you're looking for table fare, it's hard to beat those steelhead in that kind of age group.
Right. Most of the steelhead we're catching in the spring are 2.5-year-old fish. We catch 3.5-year-old fish, which are larger fish, of course. But those 2.5-year-old fish are those bright silver fish that are from 18 to 22 inches or so. The meat is just primo orange, They're great to eat. They've been eating all winter. They peck away at emerald shiners all winter. So they're like a fat, sassy, really good-looking quality fillet in that spring period.
So when you get done there, you head up to Wilson. When do you get up to Wilson?
That's going to be around that third week of April into the fourth week. This year, we're planning on going to the King of the Lake tournament the last weekend in April, which now we're post-COVID, all that. So the regulations have lifted. So we plan on doing the King Salmon tournament up there, the King of the Lake. And I have charters the weekend before that out of Wilson. And Then we're going to be fishing for kings if there's kings around, which there might be this year because of the mild winter we've had.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kings would be plan A, coho, plan A and B. Browns would probably be plan C for those early trips out of Wilson.
All right, so you get up there in April. When do those kings move in? Now that's that bite out of Wilson. You know, you're just off the Niagara Bar. You're just east of that. What point do the kings really start to come in? So if somebody wanted to come up and book a trip and go after some kings up there, when's the best time to do that?
Well, the last couple of years have been early. That last weekend in April, I fished the last 2 years, and it was pretty much bonsai king fishing right out of the gate last weekend of April, which typically been a little later, like that first week of May. We're starting to get those kings, but you know, things are changing. Like this year, again, we have a mild winter. There might be kings swimming around mid-April this year,
right,
all along the whole lake, all along a good part of that Lake Ontario shoreline. You know, Lake Erie's wide open for the most part, which in the past, Lake Erie has created this invisible ice water barrier coming to the Niagara River, which has traditionally kept a lot of the kings on the Canadian side, which is the west side of that Niagara River. It almost made it this invisible wall that when those kings started to come out of that deep water, they start to come into the shallow water, looking to eat, you know, things are happening. A lot of them always went to that west side of the river in traditional winters. That means Lake Erie was ice covered. We had very cold water or icebergs coming down, you know, that February, March period. And so those kings kind of stayed penned up over there and made for some really good fishing. Now with the advent of these warmer winters or lack of ice, these kings are coming into Canada too, but they're also coming right to the bar. They're coming in as far as Oswego a few times. Like they had kings in their harbor in late April, early May when we had these mild winters. So the rules change when we don't have a traditionally hard winter.
Yeah, so you can see a very different season this year than what I think people typically think about. So what do you think how do you think anglers should kind of change up their strategies when they're out there fishing, knowing that the elements, the things that they're going to be facing and the things that these fish are experiencing is going to be very different than what they typically see?
Be prepared. Be prepared. We could be catching kings in 150 foot of water right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Okay, versus, 50 or 60 foot of water. And a lot of guys aren't going to have their boats ready by that end of April. So you're going to have the guys putting those boats in towards the beginning of May, unless you're the tournament guys fishing that tournament. Guys are going to start trickling in May, and you're going to have this 2 week advance perhaps where, and typically they're used to going out in 40 feet and setting their program out, right? And then going from there, 40, 50, 60, right? They might be blasting out to 150 foot out of the gate by then, fishing deeper water. So when I mean be prepared is basically be prepared to have your diver programs, your lead core programs, your deeper weighted steel programs already engaged beginning of the season.
All right. We just got a question coming in, and he wants you to spill the beans already. He's just going flat out right out. Captain Pete, what are your top 10 king salmon spoon colors for Lake Ontario Kings in the summer? I see he's looking at his notes.
I got to go.
He knew this one was coming.
See, I'm prepared. See, I got a whole list. There's just so many good spoons out there that and they're all hot. Some are hot beginning of the year, some are hot this year. They won't be next year. So
they go out of fashion. It's like clothing, right?
Remember I just said you got to be prepared?
Yep.
So I was prepared. So I have my answers already. I'm prepared.
Yeah.
So some of my top spoons would be the Martel. Actually, we'll call it the Chartel family. We got the Martel, which is a green. We have the Chartel, and we have the Pertel. All three of those are great go-to spoons for me, whether they're from slims to DWs to mags. We have the 42nd spoon. We have the original carbon 14 spoon, which is a good morning, late day spoon. We have a spoon called a Rambler, in a white back and silver back. It's a black spoon with crushed orange and glow tape with either a silver or white back. Really consistent spoon. And we have a couple of new ones are the UV Alewife is a good spoon Dreamweaver came out with.
Okay.
That was a good spoon last year. We have the two-face, which has been hot as a firecracker some years. A couple years it's been off. We have a spoon called the moon cricket. Those latter two have been really good morning spoons or deep water spoons for me. And those are, and we have a black UV. It's just a very natural finish spoon. Those are all, you know, I hang my spoons in the spoon bucket. They're all on deck, ready to go. So those are some of my faves.
So I got to ask you a question. So you talked about a spoon there that was going really good for 2 years, and now it's not. So what happened? Did all the fish that like that color just get killed, and now they're not around? I say that facetiously, but like, how does a spoon go from a hot spoon to not a hot spoon?
Are you married?
I am married.
Does your wife always like the same set of shoes every day, or does she like to go and shop for a different set of, you know, maybe reds or something, right, and that's her go-to set of shoes for that season, and she kind of, the other ones fade in the past? I think it's kind of like that.
Really?
I do. That's my comparative analysis for that.
Okay.
Aside from that, that was a little joke, but that's one of the mysteries that keep the whole fishing game kind of neat. Right. It's like, how can a spoon be like dynamite, like put them on every rod, go to every day, to like it's a dud, you know, the next season or two, right? It's just, we call them one-hit wonders. That one I mentioned, the two-face, was not a one-hit wonder, but it was, you know, red hot for 2 seasons, and then it kind of faded to an average spoon for us, and we wonder why. Right. It's a good question.
Yeah. I almost, maybe, you know, water clarity changes and the reflection and the way those spoons look change. I guess that would be my scientific answer. I don't know if it's right or not, but, you know, maybe just little differences in just the way the light's hitting it based on what's going on in the water. Or maybe, you know, you have a year where you've got a little more haze in the sky or something. The water and the light. I
don't think that's different. It. I think you're 0 for 3.
All right.
I just don't think that's it. I don't.
You're the expert.
Well, we're the expert, but we don't have all the answers.
There you go.
No, that's one of the mysteries, is why you can go from red hot to a lukewarm spoon, with all things being the same, watercolor being the same. You know, we're fishing the same species of fish, same light conditions, like you kind of alluded to, and it becomes an average or a not so good spoon all of a sudden. It happens on Lake Erie too, not just Lake Ontario.
Yeah, so when we first sat down, you know, it was taking forever for questions to pop up. As soon as someone asked what your top 10 spoons were, the questions went crazy. So we got some questions here. I like this one because I like eating. So let's go with this one. This is from Corey at XTR Fishing. He says, Captain Pete, if you could only eat one trout the rest of your life, what would it be?
A brown trout.
Brown trout? All right, now I'm going to throw in another thing. What if we can add the salmons in there as well? Does it change, or are you still going brown trout?
Brown trout.
Still brown trout.
I'm going against the grain.
All right, I like it. All right, how about one here from Rob Ferguson? Rob wants to know your thoughts on running flasher/meat versus spoons on longline copper. He says, usually I run spoons. Can you run the meats and flash fly?
We run flashers and flies and flashers and meat on our long lines. Just the same as a spoon.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, now Patrick's going to get back to what we were talking about before. He says, do you have a depth, sky condition, time of day, or sea conditions these spoons relate to?
That's a great question. We constantly change our lineup. You know, I call it A team, B team, C team. So we usually start with our morning spread of, that'd be the A team. Low light spoons with glows, a lot of high vis colors. That'd be A team. Now, as the day wears on, the sky conditions change. We routinely go in and start crap canning those spoons, unless it still fires. But more often than not, the A team starts to fizzle. Then we'll go to the B team. The B team is chosen based on sky conditions, how deep of water we might be fishing. Is it sunny? Is it overcast still? So we'll start pulling those baits off in the morning and start selectively changing those out according to the conditions that are upon us.
All right. So you're changing things out. It's a bright, sunny day. How will those spoons change from what you ran in the morning under low light conditions to now we've got the sun up?
We'll start going to a lot of chrome back spoons. We'll tone down on the glows. We'll tone down on those spoons that maybe don't look as natural, in our opinion, not as gaudy, and we'll go to more of a natural, your typical blacks, greens for salmon, some purples, and get out of those early high vis glow back, glow tapes, glow everything colors.
All right, we've been talking about kind of early season stuff, and I think that's what a lot of people are focused on right now, just because they've got early season staring them in the face. But what does that Wilson fishery look like as the year kind of progresses through?
Those fish in a typical year, it starts hot and heavy, typical year, and then those fish will slowly start breaking up and migrating down the lake. They'll go along the shoreline. Some will go offshore and start migrating down the lake. So from a red hot bunched up fishery, a lot of fish in one area, it starts to fizzle out, where we got to fish a little harder, maybe fish a little longer to catch those fish. But it slowly starts to fade, and reality sets back in, and we got to work for the fish eventually.
Yeah.
And that's just primarily because they start to disperse down that lake. They follow the temperature, they follow the migratory patterns, and we go from a lot of fish to a good amount of fish, but we got to work a little harder, and they start spreading out.
Yeah.
You might have fish in 60 to 120, and you might have fish from 120 to 350 in the spring. Actually, you have like two bands of fish at times, inside and outside.
So a guy like you who takes a lot of notes, is really prepared. Do you like that? Do you like it when the fishing gets hard? Is that fun for you?
I do.
Yeah.
Except in tournaments. Sometimes I don't like it on tournaments when we get that curveball when I'm not prepared.
Right.
But day in and day out, I think I would rather have it tougher bite than a bonsai bite. That's all.
You like the challenge.
I like the challenge.